If ever there was a modern-day counterpart to the biblical story of young David facing down the Philistine giant Goliath, the Yom Kippur War was certainly it. Its eventual outcome was partly due to the young Davids of modern Israel, who dared to face the mouth of death and not back down. Avigdor Kahalani, a battalion tank commander in '73, was one of those young Davids.
The Syrians, they arrived from the east, they crossed the border, they bombed the minefields, and they put bridges on the anti-tank ditches, and they arrived close to us, and they start to hit our tanks. And my mission was to block them on the area north of the Kuneta. And it was hard because most of my tanks hit by the Syrian, and artillery shell was thousands shell all over. And their aircraft, they bomb us like crazy, and we didn't have any Israeli aircraft to protect us.
But to understand how this brave young man faced down the Syrian Goliath in the Yom Kippur War requires first a look back to what happened to Avigdor Kahalani in the heat of battle during the Six-Day War 6 years earlier.
I was a company commander. I had 14 tanks. My mission was to cross the border in Gaza Strip. After a few hundred meters, they hit my tank, and I jumped to another tank. At the end of the day, I had a mission to go to El Arish, it's the capital of the Sinai. I was in the first tank. A few kilometers before the El Arish, we were in ambush. I was in the hospital almost a year. 60% of my body was burned. I had 16 operations, and after a year, I was allowed to go to the army, but they wanted to put me in the office. And I took the paper, and they wrote my medical profile 31. And in Israel, the maximum is 97. I took the paper, I cleaned it up, I wrote 97, and I go back to the tank.
Why in the world did you go on again?
You know, my father, when I joined to the army, he told me, look, my son, you're going to join the army. This is your turn. You're going to hold the flag on your hand and the flag of the country. Don't open the hand.
And when he saw and when you saw that you had survived all the injuries that you sustained during the '67 war, what did you feel about that?
It was a miracle for me to survive, to stand up, to go back to the tank. I'm talking about '73 war. It's a few years after that. When I fought on the top of the tank, it was after 16 operations. And think just about the feeling that I had inside, that I was scared from the situation. Maybe I will go to some situation like I had a few years before that, and maybe I cannot control my body or my head.
So with all that fear that you had in your heart, that you might lose it in '73, tell me what happened to you in that war.
During the war, I was a battalion commander, and I had more than 40 tanks. It was hard combat in the Golan Heights. We lost 2/3 from the Golan Heights after less than 24 hours. My mission was to protect the area against the Syrian, and it was hard. We fought for 4 days. From Shabbat is Yom Kippur, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And the hardest day it was during Tuesday that we almost lost the combat.
That Israel manages to hold on at all is beyond any logical explanation. More than 1,400 Syrian tanks have stormed across Israel's northern border in the opening hours and days of the war. Israel has fewer than 200 tanks with which to face this military Goliath. Saturday night, the first night of the war, Cahillani asks for Air Force support. It doesn't come. The Syrians have infrared night vision and strike with precision throughout the night. The Israelis can only fire into the darkness and hope to strike their enemy. Cahillani lines up his tanks and begins a barrage of gunfire into the valley beyond their position. Syrians are led to believe there's a vast Israeli armada facing them. That night, Israel holds the line.
During the night, I hit its Soviet tank, it's a Syrian tank. It was no far from me. And the commander, he jumped from the tank. He was in fire. It reminded me what happened during the 67.
To you. Sunday, the Syrians send hundreds of tanks into the battlefield, aiming with precision toward the commander's position on each Israeli tank in the field. Cahillani watches as many of his commanders, men he knows as friends, are struck down by enemy fire. By Tuesday, Israeli forces in the Golan are almost totally decimated. Cahillani is given an order by Janusz, his commander, to stand his ground in the valley below their position. He has only 7 tanks left to face the Syrian armada. But when Janusz asks Cahillani over the radio how many tanks he has, he answers 41, just in case the enemy was listening in, he later admits.
What happened to you that day? Usually when you shoot with tanks, it's a range 2 miles, something like that, 3 kilometers, more than that. I had situation that I found 4 tanks in the front of me, 25 meters, and I was alone.
יובל נותן בעלם כזה שהוא מעיף את כולנו קדימה. אני מסתכל, בחזית שלי 25 מטר, 3 טנקים T-62, ואני צריך להחליט מה אני עושה.
There is a special handle that I move the third and the main gun to the first tank, and I scream, oh my God, I shoot him! And he didn't know what to do. It was so close to him. You know what he asked me? Excuse me, sir, what is the range? I thought I'm going to kill him. I moved to another tank, and my loader put another shell, and he shot again. And when I put the main gun to the third one, I saw main gun of the Syrian tank look straight to my face, is ready to shoot. And my gunner was screaming, yelling. And I saw the 115 millimeter look straight to my eyes, and he was ready. This is some kind of a situation how we fought on the Golan Heights during the Yom Kippur.
יובל, אני חושב שאנחנו יכולים לזוז מפה. רעיון טוב, המפקד.
The battle for the Golan will ultimately come down to this final confrontation at a hilltop called Little Hermon, and the valley below it that will be known forever after as the Vale of Tears. If the Syrians make it past this point, nothing will stop them from storming across the Galilee, destroying Tiberias, Haifa, and ultimately Tel Aviv. Kahalani's remaining tanks have all taken Syrian hits. Many have lost commanders or whole crews. Command discipline is low. Morale is failing. Defeat is in the air. The scene that follows is reminiscent of young David in the Bible. Saul and the men of Israel were frozen in fear at the sight of the giant Goliath. Kahalani gives an order to his tank commanders to move forward. No one moves. He tries cajoling them, even starting forward himself. No other tank follows.
אני משתמש בנשק האחרון שאני מבין שאין לי כבר ברירה, ואני אומר ללוחמים שלי, תסתכלו על הסורים, תסתכלו איזה לוחמים טובים הם. מה קרה לנו? הלוא אנחנו יותר טובים מהם. תתחילו לנוע קדימה, הרבצתי שאגה לתוך הרשת, מה אני מזהה בגדוד שלי? פחדנים!
Kahalani had faced death in 1967 and survived, just as David had once faced down a bear and a lion that attacked his sheep. With their common experience, and born on their shared faith in God to fight on their behalf, both young men refused to bow to fear. David stepped up to face Goliath. Kahalani ordered his tank to move forward. David had declared, "I come not with sword and shield, but in the name of the God of Israel." He carried only 5 stones into battle with his giant. Kahalani moves forward with only 7 tanks to face the massive Syrian armada. Kahalani's crippled tanks storm the hill before them, looking down at the once green valley, now blackened with the smoldering remains of hundreds of burning Syrian and Israeli tanks from 3 days of fierce fighting. Moving among them, hundreds of Syrian tanks continue their relentless advance. Kahalani orders his tanks to begin a barrage of gunfire on the advancing armada below, not expecting to stop them, but at least hoping to slow their advance long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Reinforcements don't come, but suddenly, to his amazement and without explanation, the Syrians seem struck with fear. The enemy armada begins retreating. Syrian soldiers begin running from the battlefield in all directions. Kahalani radios to Commander Janusz.
כאן 2, דוח מצב. כרגע אנחנו שולטים במצב, ארטילריה נפסקה. בקיצור אנחנו שולטים בכל דבר. חיים, כאן 20, הכל בזכותך, תאמין לי. כל הכבוד לך, כל הכבוד. אתה גיבור ישראל, עבור. כאן 2, אנחנו כרגע ב-20 כאן, האויב פורח.